Hi everyone, and welcome to Conversational Lounge with Trudy. Here I have Dr. Hanson, who has been gracious to welcome me to his beautiful residence. We're very excited about this story today. We cannot wait to hear about his journey, his career path.
Very good. My name is Dr. Hanson, and as you said, this is the first time. This is the first time ever. I have written my story about my life, but I've never talked about it. We all think about our life. At my age, I'm 90 years old. So we look back a little bit. My situation, however, was I never look back. Always look forward. I always thought there was something new, something different, something new to discover. So why look back?
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Trudy. This is very interesting. My whole life has been centered around helping other people, mentoring other people. So this is a wonderful opportunity to talk about my story, how I got to where I am. I'm 90 years old, so I have a long story, starting in a Norwegian settlement in northern Wisconsin on a dairy farm. My mother came from a German family who were more entrepreneurial, so I learned a lot about entrepreneurial activities from them. My Norwegian were just very hardworking, very devout, very religious. My mother and father were growing up during very difficult times with the early residents that came here, homesteading farms, clearing the land, all that sort of thing. So it's been a very interesting journey for me. And I would say maybe I lived in the best of times. But at the same time, I keep thinking about the future and the future for young people. And I think it may be the same. There's a lot of opportunities, a little more difficult to sort out where you're going, but maybe my comments might be of help. I went to a run-room school. I walked about a mile, and one teacher for 8 grades.
Wow.
And so that was the system. The schoolhouse is still there. As a matter of fact, I have also continued to own the farm on which I was born, which is sort of unique. Very few people can go back to their homestead and their boyhood farm and boyhood home and keep it open for the family. That's a tremendous blessing for me.
That is quite the blessing. And to also have a place that you can go and see, this is where I grew up. I'm sure you've taken your grandkids and everyone to go see that place where this is a little bit of my story right here in this farm.
Yeah, especially because I helped build a little house there, and my bedroom had a dirt floor. So this was as we were building the new house when I was about 6 years old. And so it was just a tremendous time to reflect on all that. Have my grandkids say, I have a lot of the old equipment still there, you know, every type of washing machine that ever was in the basement. And so it's sort of going down memory lane.
I would love to go visit that. What time frame was that you lived there?
Well, I was born in 1931. And that was during the Depression. The Depression was very severe at that time. We had 25% unemployment, and it was very difficult to find a job. And my father worked for $1 a day, and he drove 14 miles back and forth. And he got a job with the county to build roads. And he ran a Caterpillar, building roads, you know, through the new roads through the county and through the township and so on. And then later he became a farmer because his father was getting to the point where he couldn't farm anymore. So we ended up with a dairy farm. And so I went through all the changes that were going on in agriculture. So Yes, it was a lesson that most people don't have today. This hardship. We didn't know we were poor because everybody was in the same situation. But that's a tremendous blessing to grow up in that environment and reflect on it. Yeah.
It sure is. And this is it's very interesting that you and I are from different generations. We grew up in different countries, but my childhood memories have some similarities to yours. I would go visit relatives or I would live with them, and they had dirt floors and would smear cow dung on it. Interesting that even here in America, there was a time that floors were dirt floors.
And you're much younger than me.
Yes.
All that means is Africa was kind of following behind the changes that were going on in some of the other parts of the world. And one of my real attractions, after I learned more about the world, was to know more about Africa. And I became in my business career, became very active in working with both people in East and West Africa. And so I learned as much as I could learn from people. And I appreciate the country tremendously, still do. I think the potential is just enormous in Africa. But that's another subject.
Hey, we can branch into that.
That gets me way into my business career. Yeah.
Wow. So what countries have you visited in Africa?
I haven't visited any. I sent other people there because I had 500 people reporting to me. I had too many responsibilities. I couldn't leave.
How did you end up in Iowa?
Okay, well, first of all, got to go through the 8 grades, okay? So the first 6th grade was in the one-room school. Then they consolidated. It was a time of consolidating schools. And I ended up with going to a 2-room school for my 7th and 8th grade. Then I went to high school for 4 years on a bus and traveled about 14 miles to the closest high school. And I'm not sure what kind of a student I was. I'm not sure. I guess I was okay. I'd like to see my report card. But I was very interested in learning, and especially on topics that I was interested in, like agriculture. Because I lived on a farm, and so I was just soaking up all the information I could get on how do I improve this life and how do I understand more about what's going on here. So now families are more involved with their children during high school. Since my father and mother and father were on a farm, we had dairy cows that had to be milked twice a day. So my parents were not involved in my education whatsoever. So I had joined as many things as I could join. In my case, I was a football player, and I was part of a FFA, which is learning more about agriculture and all the things. And so I did a lot of experimenting with trying things on my own. For instance, capronizing chickens. If you capronize a chicken, a male chicken, it gets huge in terms of weight. So I was learning how to operate on chickens.
Wait, so tell me about this capronizing chicken. What is it?
Well, it's turning a male chicken into taking out its testicles, I guess you'd say.
Oh.
So they no longer are cockerels. They're just capronized. Call them capons. But that's just a little side.
That's interesting. I mean, I know about cows and bulls and doing that, but that's interesting about chicken.
Yeah. But one of the things about growing up on a farm, always something to do, always some work to do. And I would have to say that I learned to enjoy work. We had 40 milk cows when I finally left the farm and went to college. And one of my joys is to clean the barn so it was totally very nice looking. And I'd have all the cows fed, have munching on hay, have it after being milked. And when you left the barn, it was just one highly satisfying experience, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And that was all due to what we were doing. That was the ultimate of our work, making those cows comfortable,
Mm-hmm.
very comfortable, and making the place look comfortable. That just followed me the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted things somewhat organized because it made me feel good.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have to do it,
Mm-hmm.
but because of learning how work and living in a clean environment is important for not only cows, but for people.
Mm-hmm.
And so how people can live in a mess, I don't know.
I'm with you there. When your place is clean and organized, you just feel there's a peace of mind. You just feel like your space is bigger. You can breathe better, unless it's psychological, but I'm with you on that regard.
Yeah. My mother and father never went past the 6th grade. My mother was the oldest in her family. Her mother had passed away when she was in the 6th grade. She had to drop out of school to take care of the family. And in my father's case, it was a matter, I don't think he was that interested in school. And he also wanted to get to find a job
Mm-hmm.
and try to make some money to better his life, okay?
Mm-hmm.
They were both from large families. In my father's case, there were 8, and in my mother's case, there were 6.
Wow.
And
yeah.
so,
2 large families.
Yeah, everybody had large families at that time. It was just because there was no social activity in terms of when you got old.
Mm-hmm.
You just kind of expected your children to take care of you.
Oh.
And so
mm-hmm.
that's something that is kind of gone by the wayside now.
Mm-hmm.
But that was definitely a part of growing up in those days as my grandparents got older, making sure they were well taken care of, that sort of thing. High school was, I can't wait to get out of here so I can get to college.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
And, because it was a hard life, because it was very, not only a lot of work, but how do you make a living there? Even though I was very helpful on the farm, and maybe my father would have liked to have me stay there, my mother was very much pro to more education to do better. So in my high school class, there were 6 or 5 of us that went to the University of Wisconsin. It was a time when soldiers were coming back from the Second World War. The school was very crowded. There wasn't enough space for everybody to be housed near the university. And so we were put on an Air Force air base, which was several miles from the school, and you have to catch a bus, went to the school. 4 of my classmates left the university within the first week. They said, we can't take this. The life was so different. I had never been on a vacation.
Mm-hmm.
I had never stayed anywhere else in my whole life. I hardly ever had gone to a restaurant to have a meal. I was pretty green,
Mm-hmm.
I would say.
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason, I found it fascinating to be there. And I kept trying to find places closer and closer to the university. And then I found a house that was given to the university from a person who invented a way of testing milk for its butterfat content. It was called the Babcock test. And Mr. Babcock, Dr. Babcock, donated his house to needy students. And so I was accepted there as a student. Mm-hmm. My room and board was $11 a week. I was right next to the university. Mm-hmm. And I got a job at the union at the University of Wisconsin, which is, of course, is very famous because they serve beer
at the time
before anybody else. Uh-huh. But I got a job, 25 cents an hour, and I was cleaning tables. That was my job. Mm-hmm. I needed to make some money to help pay for my schooling, mm-hmm. and so I needed a part-time job while I went to school. Well, after about a week, I found out that I could get another job at the meats laboratory at the university, and they would pay me 30 cents an hour. Mm-hmm. Wow, that was a 20% increase, right? I can still remember that gentleman, when I told him I was going to quit, he told me I would never amount to anything if I couldn't keep a job longer than a week.
Oh my goodness.
So there you go. Encouragement or lack of encouragement. I found the university very, very interesting because I got a job at the meat laboratory where they were studying more about meat, and that got me interested in that field. I also started as a veterinarian. I was going to be a veterinarian. But after the first year, the University of Wisconsin did not have a program for training veterinarians. We would have to come to Iowa, who had a veterinary school. But they told me that I would have to make up a course. I was accepted, but I had to make up a course in the summertime. I couldn't do that because I had to work. I had to work during the summer to make money. And so I changed my mind to nutrition.
Oh.
It was maybe the best decision I could have made because I was being mentored by a professor who was very much into the nutrition of particularly swine. And so I just fell right into that position and changed my idea about being a veterinarian to becoming a nutritionist. For some reason, I always managed my time. So I lived in this house. There were about 30 of us. It was a cooperative house where we each did a chore to keep the expenses down. We hired a cook, but then we would do all the other things. We'd clean, we'd serve the food, we'd clean up, all those things. Every night at 7 o'clock, I would go to the library. I stayed at the library till they closed at 10 o'clock, and that was my schedule. That was another thing, learning what is a routine. That was the smartest thing I'd ever done because I didn't have to cram any more than that. I studied from 7 to 10 till 10 o'clock at night, every night, and I was just prepared. And some of my classmates and people that lived in the house would stay up and be talking to one another, and they were having all kinds of, they weren't managing their time. So
socializing.
Guess what? I'm a big proponent of a schedule, a routine, and I think it's still important for everybody today. What's your routine? Do you go to bed properly? Do you drink plenty of water? Do you eat 3 meals a day? All those things have to do with our health and our longevity. So I'm still preaching about that today. Wow. But anyway, it was a very interesting time because now my world is getting bigger. But before I went to the university, and the first year I'm home, we had a gentleman in our neighborhood that asked me if I would be willing to run a thrashing machine. It was a time when farmers would come together and they would share their work, and you take this thrashing machine from one small farm to another, and whatever amount of oats they had, you would process it. At age 16, I was given the opportunity of being in charge of a business. So now we're talking about mentoring.
Yes.
Mentoring other people, having confidence in other people, and having trust in them. And why did he have trust in me? I don't know. But what a blessing that was, huh?
Yes.
In other words, it gave me another step in terms of developing my personality, my work ethic, my goals, my ambitions, that sort of thing. So, coupling now that with my university training, that was another special time. Remember, this is a long time ago. And many things in agriculture were not yet discovered. Many of the things in nutrition were not yet discovered. Vitamins, as an example.
Oh.
Now we know about all these different vitamins and how much we need and what happens if we don't get them, all that sort of thing. When I grew up and went to college, they were still trying to figure this all out. Like, what about vitamin D? What does vitamin D do? We were feeding chickens, okay? And we found out that if you raised oats or grain or rye to the first joint, harvested it, dehydrated it, and added to the chicken feed, the chickens would grow twice as fast. Then the question is, what's in that grass that's making this happen?
Yeah.
And so one by one, they started discovering, well, these are all the B vitamins. So I was at the university at a time when all these things are being discovered. Then we had what was called the APF factor. What's the APF factor? Well, if you put that in pig feed, the pigs would grow faster. What's in the APF? It was a fermentation. Guess what that was? Antibiotic. Chlorotetracycline.
Wow.
It was developed in this fermentation, added to the pig feed, and all of a sudden the animals are growing faster. So I also learned a lot about the meats business, okay? Because I was working in the meats laboratory where we were analyzing different kinds of meat and the quality of meat. I ended up becoming on the meats judging team. Now people compete on the computer, you know, computer knowledge. But in those days, it was just, what do you know about animals? And what do you know about the meat that's produced from those animals? And how that all reflects into the human diet. And so all those things were being discovered. And so I became very fascinated with being on the livestock judging team, on the meats judging team. Now I'm going to different universities and I'm learning more and more. My world is getting bigger, right? My world is getting bigger. That's what growing up is all about. Is your world getting bigger? And it gets bigger because you're interested, you ask questions, you have a passion for something. Right? So part of my mentorship is trying to develop, what is your interest? What do you think you're really going to be good at? Because a passion should be coupled with the fact that you'll put enough energy into it to really understand it and to try to roll back the unknowns and look for things that you can make improvements on, right? I think that's what entrepreneurship is all about, is learning what needs to be done, what are people struggling with, how do you fill that need? That's what you're doing with that's exactly what you're doing. You're trying to couple people with experience, with people that have questions, and trying to develop that whole thing, right?
Yes, virtually. That's exactly what we're trying to do.
Yeah. Very good. You're on the leading edge, Trudy. You're on the leading edge of what's missing today. I think more and more people need what you're going to be able to do with people's story. Everybody has a different story, but everybody has a story. Doesn't matter who they are, what they've done, everybody has a story. And most people don't think about their story. They don't think about where they came from and how they got to where they are.
I couldn't agree more with that, because I saw a quote at some point and someone said that, remember that everything that you have today is something that you really worked hard for or you really prayed hard for yesterday. So just being in that mindset of appreciating what we have today and using that to fuel our future is as important as what we were doing yesterday, praying for this moment. I'm really passionate about if I can bridge any gap that I see exist, and especially if that gap is between people, connecting the right people with the right resources, sharing a story like yours, because there's so many viewers out there that they would never get a chance to meet Dr. Hanson in person. But you're a walking wealth of knowledge and experience, and that's why we're here.
Yeah. Thank you. So, okay, now the Korean War is on. I'm graduating from college. I decided initially to become a county agent. A county agent was someone in a county that helped farmers with transferring their knowledge from the university to their farming practices, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And so I did that for 2 summers. And the man that I was working with had more advice for me as a mentor. He said, you need to think about specializing more because now farmers are learning more from other places besides. At one time, we had a real role in advising farmers, but now farmers are getting their information from newspapers, magazines, people calling on them with technology. And he said, we're getting left in the dust. We can't be an expert in everything. And what we desperately need is somebody that can really focus on a specialty. And so that really sunk in. What I guess I'm saying is, along the way, we are mentored by other people. Other people make little statements, we take it to heart, and in my case, because the Korean War was on, I was going to be drafted, and I heard that if I volunteered for the Korean War, actually signed up to go to the Korean War, I could choose the field that I wanted to be in. Well, at that point, I knew that the veterinary corps bought all the meat for the armed services. And so I decided, if I volunteer, maybe I can join the veterinary corps and become a buyer for the military. The Korean War was going they needed soldiers so bad. They lined us up in front of this barracks, and they said, okay, now, one of you go in this door, the next one goes in this door, so on. Okay, all of you are in this room are in the infantry. All of you over in this room are in the artillery. Guess where I am? I ended up in the artillery.
Oh my goodness.
To be trained as a forward observer. A forward observer is someone who crawls around on his belly to find the enemy and then calls in the bombs to annihilate them. It was the most dangerous thing that could be. I was a good soldier. I went through the whole training, but at the same time, I went to see the post-veterinarian, and I said, I have all these skills about buying meat. The reason I joined the military was to become part of the veterinary corps to do this, and by that time, I'm only like, what am I, 21 years old? And he said, well, I'll see what I can do. When the orders came out, I completed my training as a forward observer. I had no idea what was going to happen, but everybody in that platoon went to Korea. I was transferred to the veterinary corps. What a blessing.
Wow.
Second lesson for people. We are all in charge of our own life. No one was going to do that for me. I had to do that on my own. That was a lesson that I can't overemphasize, because it's one thing I try to tell all my grandchildren. You are the president, the CEO, the chairman of the board of your life. Nobody can tell you what to do. And nobody should tell you what to do. Your life is your life, and you need to make a decision about your life. Where do you want it to go? What do you want to do? And nobody's going to do it for you. Okay, I'm in the veterinary corps. I'm sent to Fort Worth, Texas. I'm now in the veterinary corps buying meat for the Army.
Wow.
And the Air Force and the Marines, you name it, filling contracts, because I can go into a cooler and I can take all of the best animals and fill a contract, for our military. They got the best. They got the best meat that was available. I made sure.
Wow.
Okay. So now I'm in a new chapter, right? I'm living off base. I have a private room. I go in at 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm done by noon. Now what am I going to do? So I can't just waste my time here, right? Wait for 6 o'clock the next morning. So I got a job at a grocery store stocking shelves. Well, what am I going to do at night? Well, I got a job at a veterinary wholesale company filling orders. Now I'm meeting all kinds of new people, right? Now I'm being mentored by more people. Just learning how to meet people.
Yes.
Learning how to be mentored by other people. Wonderful. But we have to be interested. And the lieutenant came to me one day, but he says, how would you like to go to Europe for the next 6 months? Wonderful. Now my world's really getting big.
Right.
And so now I'm on my way to Europe to become a post-veterinarian. Ended up in France at an ammunition depot, and I was in charge of the cold storage, 80 guard dogs, and all of the girls at the snack bar.
And all the girls.
I'm 21 years old. I got to check, make sure they got their hair nets on, their fingernails are clean. Well, now I'm just about 80 miles from Paris, right?
Yeah.
So now I'm saying, whoa, I better see some things here while I'm in this 6 months. Right? So at that point, soldiers were well accepted. The Second World War was over. The United States was very influential in that outcome. So we were just welcomed, okay? So I would get a ride to Paris, and they had these USO centers for soldiers, and they would hook you up with a family that wanted to keep a soldier for the weekend.
Interesting.
So now I'm hooked up with a family called Balancy Barons. He was a big contractor in Paris, building apartment buildings. He had a wonderful family. Anytime you come to Paris, you just come and stay here.
Wow.
So now I got my housing all arranged. I can just explore Paris. And so I did all that. I went on a trip to Switzerland. I have books about all these things I saw, and then I went to London one time, and I always heard about number 10 Downing Street, and Churchill was still in power then. I find a cab that takes me to number 10 Downing Street, and guess what happened? Winston Churchill comes out of his apartment, just me and him. I'm there to take his picture. He gives me the V for victory sign, and I've got his picture. And now I'm meeting famous people, right?
Yeah. Your network is growing.
My network is growing, yeah. Yes. Now I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to be out of this military thing in another couple months. I better decide what I'm going to do. So I decided I was going to apply to a graduate school to take my county agent's advice and become a specialist in nutrition. Well, before I get too long, this professor comes to me. He says, you don't want to just get out of here with a master's degree. Why don't you stay around and get a PhD? I had no idea. I had no idea to get a PhD. Because one of the things that was a requirement for a PhD was to learn and pass 2 language exams, French and German. So guess what? I studied for 6 weeks, took the exam, and passed.
6 weeks in a different language completely, and passed.
And passed. That was my friend. I thought, well, now let me try this on German. Same thing.
How much time did you dedicate on that language learning?
A lot. Intensive study to learn enough about the language, structure, sentence structure, that sort of thing.
You were really driven.
I have no idea how I did it.
Learn a language in 6 months?
But make a long story short, it was a wonderful experience. And now I'm going into my 2nd year. She becomes pregnant, naturally. It happens, right?
These kind of things apparently happen.
turned out that she had twins.
Oh.
And it turned out that they were born prematurely. And so, very stressful time in our life. Because at that time, 65 years ago, they did not have the facilities to save newborns like they do today. And the little boy lived for 24 hours. We never got to hold him. The girl lived 10 days and died on the day that I took my final exam for my PhD.
Oh my goodness.
A very, we think about our lives and what we go through and the stresses that we go through, right? Almost every married couple can probably relate to the fact that, it's not a sunny day every day, right? How do you get through these difficult times? I compare it to the weather. There are cloudy days, there's stormy days, there's sunny days, but we have to be, as a couple, prepared for those stormy days when things aren't going just right? And how you work together as a family and as a couple. How do you communicate, keeping in touch and communicating your feelings and your emotions and that sort of thing. And so those are other advices for young people who are thinking about getting married, making that commitment to one another. And it seems like in my day, you didn't get married with a possibility of getting divorced, or trying it out, that sort of thing. Seems to be going on today. It was a commitment, right? Or, for better or worse. Well, within a short period of time after we're married, it's for worse, right? And
oh, I'm so sorry.
So that went on in our life, and now it's time to look for jobs. Okay, I'm graduating. I'm not waiting for my ceremony to get my diploma. I'm looking for a job. I got to get going. So at that point, there were lots of jobs for PhD students who knew something about nutrition. I made application at DuPont in Wilmington, Delaware, Pfizer, Commercial Solvents, Swift and Company, all different kinds of companies. And a small little company here in Iowa called Fox-Built Feeds.
Flax-built seeds.
Fox-Built Feeds. It was a little family-owned company. And now we're starting to understand who I am and where I was going in my life. I'd always thought about having my own business.
Wow.
Many young couples today are thinking the same thing. How do we quit working for somebody else and work for ourselves with that freedom and and you think about all these people that are doing that and doing well. You don't think about the people that tried it and didn't do well.
No.
And there's plenty of those, right? But I had a job offers from all those companies, good job offers, and paying me a lot of money at that time.
Definitely not 35 cents an hour.
As a PhD student.
Right.
I decided to come to Des Moines. I decided to come to Des Moines and work for a small family company because I thought that I didn't have any money to start a business. Right? You do need money if you're going to start a business.
You do.
And so I thought, okay, I can go there. I can learn the business. I had no idea that I was going to be given the opportunities that I was given until I got here. The executive vice president of the company came down with TB 6 months after I joined the company.
Oh my.
And so the president of the company, the owner, invited me to become his mentor. Now I'm into managing people. I'm into learning this business inside out. I am learning more than I've ever learned before. At the same time, I'm a nutritionist for all the different species. I'm formulating feeds where we were selling products to farmers to enhance what they own and grew themselves, to make their operations more successful, make more money, more efficient, all that sort of thing. It was a wonderful, wonderful experience. About 3 or 4 years after I joined the company, I came here in 1957. In 1961, the company was sold to a meat packer. And this meat packer, John Morrell, decided that I should become the assistant director of research for the meatpacking business. And I had worked in the meatpacking area in the military. I didn't want to be in the meatpacking business.
You felt like you were going back in time?
But they were selling all of their byproducts to the mink industry. So immediately, I decided I'm going to become a mink expert. Mink, you know what mink are?
I want to know more.
Heard about mink fur coats?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
I know about, they use them to make eyelashes now.
Well, mink fur coats were, back then, that was a status symbol for women to wear.
Ah, luxury.
Well, they wore them with blue jeans, okay? Oh, nothing better than a fur coat with blue jeans, right? Well, you know what happened to the fur coat business. I mean, it became something of a...
Ethical.
Yeah. But I became a real expert because meat, mink are fed 50% meat and 50% cereal. I said, great, now I'm in the cereal business. I'll just develop a cereal to go along with this meat and make the meat shinier and like more luxurious, because that's what they bring. They're graded by on exactly that. How shiny are these fur coats? And so, very long story short, but I was ready to introduce the product. The company was located in Chicago. I was supposed to go in there and make all the arrangements. That company said, the morning I was supposed to go, the meeting's been canceled. Why has it been canceled? It's been canceled because Kellogg's sell all of their cereal byproducts to the mink industry, and they heard that we may be going into competition with them, and they said, you go into the cereal business and we will boycott your meat. Well, being a meat packer, they couldn't afford to take that chance, I guess. So here goes my project down the drain. All the time I spent on it. I became very distraught. I said, if this is the way it works, this is not who I am. I'm an honest, upright, tell it like it is guy, okay? I quit. I said, I'm not doing that. I was at a convention. I became so distraught, I sent him a telex, said, I'm not coming back, I've quit. Okay, now what do I do? By now I've got a wife and a young child. I got to find a new job. So she's in with her parents near Chicago, and I'm at this convention, mink convention, and I come back to Chicago and start interviewing for jobs. And quite fascinating story. I was hired right on the spot
Wow.
to work for a company in Chicago. But they said, well, now, there's one caveat, and that is I want our marketing guy to meet you. And he just got back from Japan, and he can't sleep. So the doctor sent him home with a shot of morphine to put him to sleep. And you go back to Des Moines, we'll send our airplane out there on Monday morning, and we'll pick you up. And I came back to Des Moines, and I told my ultimate partners what I was doing. I was about to leave Des Moines. I was going back to Chicago. Wait a minute. We're just as unhappy as you are.
Oh.
Why don't we quit? And why don't we start a company together?
Oh. Whoa.
Wonderful. That's what I wanted to do my whole life, was start a company. Right?
Right.
And so I said, forget about the airplane. I went to work in my basement on the 25th of August, 1961, and started formulating all the feeds, and we formed a company and called it Triple F. Triple F was first in progress, first in quality, first in results.
Wow.
We were the fastest growing feed company. I was introducing all kinds of new concepts in the feed industry. I thought, you know, CocaCola sells Coca-Cola over the place. They don't own all these bottling companies. They just franchise. They send out the syrup, and they just add a little water and deliver the product and call it Coca-Cola. And why don't we do that in the feed business? So immediately we're in the feed business. I got 5 people making the feed. It was just wonderful.
Wow. An idea was born out of, we're tired of this, we're just quitting. You almost moved to Chicago.
Isn't that the way? It's just fascinating.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
I think sometimes in life we just need a little kick to.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Until you have it, nothing happens, right?
Right, right. Nothing happens. Otherwise, we're just complacent. We're just
keep
happy.
going on and going. But that's what happened.
Wow.
That's
you
how
are an entrepreneur.
Yeah. Now I'm an entrepreneur. And so it was a 50-year story, okay? I was the founder of the company along with 3 other guys. They all died. I liquidated the company 50 years later. I had the same job for 50 years.
Wow.
And by that time, we had 5 companies. And so I retired in 2011. Been retired about 10 years. And so here I am. I'm not ready to retire.
No. And
now what am I going to do? Okay, so now, as I told you, I never look back. I always look to the future, okay? And I'm thinking, okay, what can I do? How can I help people? I'm 88 years, in my 80s, okay? And I'm saying, well, nothing really came to mind until the COVID hit. And when the COVID hit, it talked about your immune system. What is the status of your immune system? If you have immunity, you're not going to get it. If you have an immune system, you don't get the flu, you don't get a cold, you don't get anything. You're very healthy, right? Well, I knew, because 40 years before that, I had started growing beneficial bacteria for animals. And it was amazing, because I posted a lot of pigs and chickens that had been given these particular organisms that we were growing. And it was just miraculous. I was trying to replace antibiotics at that time, which is now still being done. It's now being done in a big way. But this was before we ever had probiotics, okay? I had to go around and educate people about what is this we're trying to do. I knew in growing up that at every mile and a half there was a cheese factory. And those cheese factories were using microorganisms to make cheese. I grew up in Wisconsin. Well, it's a big beer state. Microorganisms are used to make beer. Microorganisms was used in all kinds of fields. Why aren't they being used in agriculture? So I started looking into that, and I ended up forming a joint venture with a Swedish company 40 years ago. And I was in London. We had actually had a company that we ended up owning in England. I was in London. I just flew over to Stockholm. I heard about this company over there that was making these probiotics for people. So I went over there to meet these people. And what they told me was, here's what fascinated me. They were growing an organism called Streptococcus faecium. Streptococcus faecium was isolated from the intestinal tract of a nursing infant. This is an infant nursing it from its mother. It was known as the well baby bacteria, because if the mother was nursing this baby, they had developed that particular organism. It didn't exist anywhere else. But the unique thing about that organism was it multiplied every 16 minutes.
Interesting.
Multiplied every 16 minutes, which means it outgrows everything else. That's why all the babies that were being nursed were just healthy. They looked healthy, they were healthy, they weren't getting anything. Why? Because of those bacteria in the gut. I became very fascinated with the relationship between intestinal bacteria, the immune system, and overall health. So when the COVID thing started, I said, you know what? I know a lot about this. I could just sit here and do nothing. Okay, I'm 88 years old. If I want to start another company, I'm 88 years old. I'm saying, why not? Why don't I do this? I told my kids what I was going to do. Well, they never did tell their dad what to do. and they didn't tell me not to do this. But because my whole goal in life, I think the secret to life, is to help other people, mentor other people, try to find a niche where they can do something that is not being done. And in this case, what we're trying to do is to educate people. These intestinal bacteria, we have about 5 to 6 pounds of bacteria in our gut right now. Wow. You don't know that.
No, I don't. I am learning right now.
You don't think about that.
No.
You don't think about why are those bacteria so important? Well, it has to do with everything in your body. It has to do with your immune system, your mental capacity, your attitude, all kinds of things. But those bacteria in your gut are also subject to all kinds of stresses and strains. Whatever stresses and strains you're going through affects these bacteria. So that's why supplementing those with organisms that multiply quickly is so important. And now they're called probiotics. And probiotics are one of the least understood health aspects of life. And that's the business I started. And because I had started a company 40 years ago, was still in existence, and they're now making products for those purposes, I had a place to get the product made. Wow. And so I started a business. Now I'm 90 years old. I'm still going,
Yes.
redoing my website, trying to reach more people, trying to make sure that they understand the reason it's in a capsule is not because it's medicine. It's because if you activate these bacteria with moisture, they start growing. So you put them in a capsule, which is moisture-free. That's why it's in a capsule. And so it stays viable, because once it comes in contact with moisture, heat, and nutrition, they start growing. I say now, in our case, they multiply every 22 minutes. So we put 9 billion of those little bacteria in this capsule. Well, you can imagine when you start multiplying that every 22 minutes, you're just flooding the gut with beneficial bacteria, which is what keeps you healthy. Why am I so healthy at 90 years old? I got bone marrow cancer. I got various allergies that I've dealt with over the years. I'm still healthy.
Right.
I would say I'm very healthy.
Yes.
At my age.
Absolutely.
And
I couldn't agree more.
And so I'm a believer, okay? Just trying to help other people understand it. Having a tough time, because most people don't understand their own body and understand how to stay healthy, how to improve your nutrition, and keep healthy. So we were in 100 countries in the world by the time I left the business.
100 countries in the world.
I invented a number of things, okay? We could go there, but I don't know how long you want this
we can keep going. I know you mentioned at some point that you had over 500 employees.
Yes.
That's a huge company.
Well, because we started all these other divisions, things that were connected to, we started out in the nutrition business, okay? Vitamins and minerals. Those are the two things, okay? Then I got into the probiotic business, okay? And then I got into inventing a machine that cooks things with friction.
Okay, tell me more about this machine. I'm really fascinated.
This is a story. Well, soybeans are raised commercially here, okay? And soybeans have 22% oil. And soybeans didn't really get started here until the Second World War. In the Second World War, they used the oil that was in soybeans for ammunition.
Interesting.
And they needed all the oil that they could get, okay? And they found out that the way to get more oil out of the soybean was to extract it with a solvent called hexane. Hexane is sort of one molecule away from gasoline. Okay? And so you have to get rid of the hexane after you take out the oil. You separate the oil, and then you got to drive off in order to do that, you got to heat the soybean, okay? Well, before that happened, people thought, okay, animals need not only carbohydrate, they need protein. Since soybeans also have 40% protein, they could just raise them both together. And let's say turn a bunch of pigs into a field with corn and soybeans planted together. The hogs, they call it hog down the corn. This is a long time ago. But this was professors that were doing this. Well, lo and behold, what happened was the pigs would get fat, but the fat was so soft and they wouldn't grow. nobody understood why they wouldn't grow. But when the solvent extraction business came along, somehow or another it solved that problem. They still didn't know what they were doing by heating it. Well, I started studying this because by the time I got into it, the oil was not the main product, it was the protein. You could leave the oil in the soybean, but you had to get rid of whatever it was that was causing the pigs not to grow, or the chickens.
Mm-hmm.
So in my research, I found out that what was in the soybean was an inhibitor called the trypsin inhibitor. Trypsin is a enzyme produced in your pancreas that helps you break down protein into smaller pieces. In other words, protein comes in a long chain,
Mm-hmm.
and trypsin will break it up into smaller chains, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Make a long story short. And then it can be absorbed into your bloodstream, goes to your liver, and that's what gives you the protein you need to live, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And that this inhibitor could be inactivated by heat. So when they were driving off the hexane, they were just getting rid of the inhibitor.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm saying, okay, how do we do this without doing the hexane? Because hexane is a carcinogen, and if you leave a little bit of hexane in the meal and you start consuming this, it's a cancer-producing ingredient.
Mm-hmm.
And so for people, especially, because people can eat soybeans, but they have to be processed. They have to be, cooked.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm starting to say, well, okay, how do we do this? How do we provide the heat that's necessary? I started looking at all the different ways: infrared, microwave, direct and indirect heating. The problem was, on all those things, soybeans also have hulls that are very subject to catching on fire. So everything I tried was either not, it was too expensive,
Mm-hmm.
or it was too dangerous. And so all of a sudden, we came up with the idea that soybean oil is a lubricant. And so if we could squeeze this soybean through a tube with restrictions, we could use the oil as a lubricant and create heat. And we found out that this was called an extruder.
Mm-hmm.
And extruders are a common thing because they were using extrusion to make all kinds of cereal foods and dog foods and so on. But they were using steam, not
as the
they
lubricant.
they weren't using the barrel
Mm-hmm.
as a form of heat. They were using steam, and then they were just compressing it with this barrel.
Mm-hmm.
So we went to a manufacturer of extruders and said, we want you to, if you build this thing for us. Because at that time, every ton of soybeans we put through there would be worth $100 a ton more.
Mm-hmm.
So the economics for a farmer was just tremendous.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, well, that won't work. We said, we're not here to ask you if it'll work. We want to know if you'll build this thing for us. Well, yeah, we'll do that. So they built one. We wore it out in 6 tons of soybeans because we also found out that soybean hulls are the most abrasive thing that you can imagine.
Oh my goodness.
And it wore the machine out.
Oh no. Mm-hmm.
So now we're into metallurgy, but we think we're really onto something here.
Mm-hmm.
Because every farmer had a tractor, and if we could make this thing portable, every farmer could be cooking his own soybeans and combining it with his grain, and feeding his animals. And so I'm on a mission. I'm on a mission. Everybody's telling me this won't work. I'm not listening to anybody. I'm just prowling forward. And guess what? We made it work. And then we found out that there were other uses for this extruder. It was encapsulating non-protein nitrogen in grain, encapsulating it in corn, as an example. And so now some company in Australia contacted us and said, this is a wonderful idea. We want to know more about this. So pretty soon we're in the international business. Then we get a call from France saying, we just read about your invention and we're in the urea business and we're having a tough time selling urea. Why don't we do this together? So all of a sudden, we're not just in the U.S. deal, we're in the international deal. Now I'm flying all over the world.
Wow.
Teaching other people about this technology. And it's just gone from there to, as we perfected it, I had to put up all kinds of people that told me this isn't going to work. And I had a professor in South Dakota said, because soybeans are so abrasive, you're going to wear out the intestinal tract of animals. I mean, ridiculous things. But,
wow. Instead of like roughage.
If you're an entrepreneur, you have to believe in what you're doing. You can't be listening to people that say, well, I tried that, or I thought about that, it won't work. If you know what you're doing, and you're sure of it, don't let anybody talk you out of it, because that's the lesson that you can learn from this process. So anyway, we called it InstaPro because this barrel was 30 seconds. By the time you put it in here, to the time it came out here, it was 350 degrees. And that was the temperature. It was boiling in oil. The inhibitor was gone. And ultimately, we added a press to press the oil out. We didn't get it down to 0.5% like they do with solvent extraction, but we got it down to maybe 6%, 5 or 6%. And at that point, it was just wonderful to leave it in. So that's what got us into 100 countries in the world. And
wow.
The company is still going, and my picture's hanging out there as the inventor of this concept.
Wow.
And so
I am just honored to be sitting next to you. You have done...
Well, it's just, it's plowing new ground. It's learning that these beneficial bacteria will help animals. Now we're trying to use this technology for people because I ultimately got interested in feeding people. So I got, with this extrusion business, we got into non-protein, non-genetically modified grains, organic grains for people. And then we started a huge health human food company. And that's still going.
What's the name of that company, if you don't mind me asking?
We started with Soy Innovations. It's now called Harvest Innovation. It's now owned by ADM. I sold it to a group of investors. And so we have all these various companies that are going. So InstaPro International is a separate company. MetaPharm is now BioFirm. They're just growing organisms for other people. And Harvest Innovations making human food. So, and now the new company I started is AuthenticProbioticPlus.com.
Wow.
And so we call it authentic because it's real. And probiotics are beneficial bacteria. And the plus is because we add additional nutritional factors to help the immune system, like zinc and vitamin D3 and ascorbic acid, that sort of thing. So
in one capsule.
one capsule. It's all in one capsule. Yeah.
So
And
to
so you
get
just
the
take one a day.
nutrients,
Pardon?
to get the benefits, how many capsules do you need to take a day?
One.
Just one.
At any time is ordinary. You don't have to take it with food and you noticeably you'll be feeling well.
Wow.
And if you come in contact with various stresses, it also helps overcome those stresses and changes your mood. I have people that say, you know what? I've never felt better. You wake up every day saying, this is a wonderful day. Yeah, it's one of the best days I've ever had. And I even say that when I'm 90 years old.
That's testament. So if anyone wants to maybe read more about probiotics or understand more, or maybe they want to sample your product or even, buy a little to try it, how would they do that?
Well, I have a website, authenticprobioticplus.com. And go on the website, they can order it. It's I sell it for $36 for a 2-month supply. So that's $18 a month. Free shipping. Also have it in a 1-month supply, 30 capsules for $18.50. So it's doable, it's affordable, and it's beneficial. I can't emphasize enough the value that it has to people. And I'm a testament to it myself. I have myeloma, I have bone marrow cancer. I've had it for about 15 years, and about 10 years ago I was told I had 5 years to live. And I'm still here. And I don't know if it's all based on the probiotic. It's also based on eating a proper diet and that sort of thing. But that's all part of my probiotic business. It's not a magic pill, okay? It doesn't mean you don't have to eat properly, drink enough water, get enough sleep, all those things, exercise. You see my exercise table there. It's just a way that I do my exercise every morning. But it's also good to just feel like life is really worth living, no matter what age you are. And the feeling of helping other people, Trudy, that's what you're doing here with what you're doing is trying to mentor people, finding out their stories, how they might connect with you to deal with whatever the product is. In other words, what's the process of getting it into the public, okay? Because people are buying things differently today, right? It's not the same.
For someone who's watching and maybe they want to venture into entrepreneur journey, or they have an idea but they haven't really had the confidence to follow their dreams, what would you advise such a person, maybe an upcoming entrepreneur or an entrepreneur who started and they're feeling like, I just need to go get a job somewhere?
Trudy, I think that's a very good point, because it does take confidence to move ahead with a project that you don't know for sure whether it's going to be successful or not, okay? Now, I've painted a story here today where everything was pretty normal and pretty on the upbeat, but I haven't talked about all the things that I was into that didn't work out. In other words, in any life story, people are going to go through difficult times. And how do you deal with those difficult times? But at the same time, I don't think you should be intimidated to try it. In other words, nothing's going to happen until you try something, right? And having that confidence and having someone that has confidence in you and that will tell you to go for it. And that's where my family's been for me, and I'm trying to be there for my children.
Thank you so much for being a part of our show today and being able to share your story. By sharing this story, first, you're mentoring me directly, just sitting across from you, and thousands of people that are watching who might not get a chance to meet you in person. but they might have a chance to watch this video, and through your story and through them watching it, it might impact their life. Here we have 3 goals, which is to mentor, connect, and inspire others through real life stories